I wrote a whole article about this a year ago, but since you people don't like to read, I figured I'd go ahead and make a video about it too.
There is a divide in the way people consume and discuss hip-hop. On one side, you have the Travis fans, the Cardi riders, Opium fanboys, the new gen fans of rap. They want a sick beat and a vibe. They don't care much about lyrics or the history of hip-hop. And on the other side, you have the unks, and they probably aren't all that impressed with the current state of hip-hop, which creates a huge disconnect.
There's been an infiltration into hip-hop, and there's been an infiltration into many spaces to where there are people that are not genuine. They're in these spaces and they're in hip-hop specifically to win. They're not there for the love of the game. They're not there for the love of the art and the love of the artist. They're there to win. See, a certain artist has a group of fans.
That means hip-hop is dying, or at least that it's not in a healthy place.
A lot of people online and on YouTube in particular seem to have this idea that there's a problem in the hip-hop space because there seems to be a divide between a lot of people that are what we would call hip-hop purists and people that kind of just like the vibes. I'm here to say that there is no problem in hip-hop. I think the problem is that we think there's a problem in hip-hop. I would argue that there's a difference between a hip-hop artist and a rap artist. Let me explain. Hip-hop is a cultural movement that consists of different art forms such as dance, graffiti, DJing, and of course rapping. However, that doesn't necessarily have to be attached to the hip-hop movement. In the year 2025, what we call rap music is simply just a genre of music, and I don't think that rap artists necessarily have the same values or obligations that a hip-hop artist might have. You could even really argue that it's just trap music, honestly. That's a whole different thing in and of itself. Every once in a while, we'll have an artist come along who is so stylish, so influential, that it creates its own lane and so many other artists follow right behind. When punk rock first came out, punk was this anti-establishment, anti-authoritarian movement.
Loud, fast, and simple, punk rescued rock and roll by giving the genre a razor blade edge it hadn't had since its earliest days. But the music's only ever been just one facet of punk's identity. It's more than just a sound. It's a philosophy, an attitude, and crucially, a look.
As time sort of went on, that just became the aesthetic for rock music. I think this is an apt analogy for how commerce tends to commodify all sorts of movements and to make it easily available once it becomes commercially viable. Once it starts being sold at Target, we can pretty much stop saying that it's a cultural movement. It's a little difficult for us to still consider rap and hip hop to be the same thing if hip hop is supposed to be anti-establishment and is also the #1 mainstream, highest selling genre out of all genres.
And then another really important thing about hip hop is, what were the parents of these suburban high school kids listening to rock music? They were listening to rock music. And a generation before, when they were teenagers, they listened to rock music to piss off their parents. So if your parents in 2002 are already listening to rock music, how do you piss off your parents?
By listening to hip hop.
So hip hop became the music of teenage rebellion.
Yeah.
If your 40-year-old dad is telling you how much he likes Pearl Jam, that may push you away from Pearl Jam a little bit if you're 15 years old.
It simply can't coexist. And this is why I think the labels have done a really dastardly thing by grouping all of these things together. It's almost like the term urban music, right? I hate that term because it flattens all of our contributions into just being, well, this is for black people. It doesn't matter if it's pop music, R&B, hip hop. They'll just say, well, because the artist that produced it is black, it's urban music. I'm also a bit averse of us talking about it in that way because this is specifically how marketing people target demographics. They're not looking at it from the perspective of what is it that you believe. They're looking at it from the perspective of how can we sell this to your ethnicity or your age group. And this is really the only thing that I don't think that a lot of my contemporaries such as FD Signifier and Haji and a lot of the other people that are talking about the hip hop problem is that a lot of them are still thinking about it in marketing terms. They're thinking about it in terms of age demographic splits and ethnicity demographic splits, but they're not talking about it from the core ethos in which I feel like the divide is being had. This is why, in my opinion, it's a little difficult to consider, regardless of how talented the artist is, that we should assume that they should be promoting some sort of activism or whatever. And that's not to say that hip hop can't also be fun, but Do artists such as Future and Sexy Red or Glorilla or Megan Thee Stallion owe us activism in their art form? In my previous video, I talked about how in the music industry we tend to obscure how a lot of the machinery of the industry works to promote things. And this kind of ties into that conversation, so make sure you check that video out in the title card. I don't think we should be blaming the artist for diluting the hip-hop sound, because it's not like Travis Scott or Drake invented SoundCloud or Spotify. They're not the reason why the stream of a song is only like 1/100th of a cent or something like that. These artists didn't invent YouTube, Spotify, SoundCloud, or any of the other platforms that lowered the barrier for entry. To ignore how technology plays into this whole idea, it would be like blaming J.K. Rowling or Stephen King for the fact that people don't read because they've oversaturated the market. With the availability of pretty much anything you want to hear available at your fingertips at pretty much any given point in time on demand, we are not lacking in hip-hop authenticity. Hip-hop doesn't have a problem. The problem is how we're looking at it, and I think there's a lot of people that are making a lot of money from this divide. Hip-hop is as strong as it's ever been. There's such an availability of music that otherwise wouldn't be heard if it wasn't for the technology and the platforms. And this is a deeper conversation about how passive we are with consuming any sort of media, whether it be music, film, television, books, or whatever. I really want everyone to really take into deep consideration what they're listening to, what the message is, and why they're listening to it. Otherwise, the people that have the power and the people that are crafting the message will be able to get any sort of message across to you, and you'll accept it.